Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some ditsies. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Oh, welcome guys, Miss Liz in the house, and tonight we have a surprise guest in the house. You guys did not know about her until a couple of days ago. We have Rosalind Teatimes in the house, and we're going to talk about her books. We're going to talk about 3 incredible books. You'll see 2 tonight, but she's going to mention a 3rd one, so stay tuned for that. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. We're going to get you guys on to all those platforms: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Lemonade, Clapper, all those good ones. Give those a like, follow, and subscribe. And if you see the guests are there, give the guests a follow, because that's how we support one another in this house. Also, jump over to the podcast apps: Podbean, iHeartRadio, Listen Notes, Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those good platforms. But I really want you to jump over to babyboomers.org, because if you're looking to get featured on different podcasts, there are over 50 different shows that are looking for a guest all the time, and they're my colleagues, and I've been partnering with them for about 4 years. So check them out, babyboomers.org. Incredible guest over podcast shows over there as well. So let's get started with disclaimer and then a beautiful intro, and then we're going to get Rosalind in here, and we're going to spill her tea. And her tea is thrillers, excitement, and atmospheric. I think I said it right. If not, I will get Rosalind to say it. So let's get started with disclaimer. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at bookingmissliz@gmail.com, or check out my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where every conversation reminds us that some of the most fascinating stories are born where intellect, experience, curiosity, and imagination meet. Today, we are delighted to welcome Rosalind Teatimes, award-winning suspense author, retired mathematics educator, and expert bridge player. Rosalind spent nearly 40 years in the classroom as an award-winning high school mathematical teacher, inspiring students to think critically, solve complex problems, and approach challenges with strategy and persistence. That same sharp, analytic mind now fuels her crime fiction. As the author of A Reluctant Spy and The Fourth Woman, Rosalind creates page-turning suspense filled with danger, intelligent mystery, and characters who must think several steps ahead. Her novel, A Reluctant Spy, has received major recognition, including the 2025 New York Big Book Award for Suspense and the 2026 Independent Press Award for Suspense. She is also working on the third book in the series, Blood Match, continuing the thrilling journey for readers who have become invested in the world of intrigue. Rosalind's remarkable background includes degrees in mathematics and chemistry from the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg and a master's degree in mathematical education from Cornell University. She is also the author of the long-running Barrel AP Computer Science Review book, now in the 13th edition. Today we'll explore the inspiration behind A Reluctant Spy, building suspense through logic and strategy, how mathematical influences storytelling, the discipline between writing unforgettable mysteries, the journey from educator to award-winning novelist, what readers can expect from Blood Match. Rosalind reminds us that storytelling and mathematics may seem like two different worlds, yet both depend on patterns, timing, problem solving, and knowing exactly when to reveal the next clue. So grab your favorite cup and join us for a fascinating conversation filled with mystery, strategy, creativity, and real life tea, truth, experience, and awareness. Let me get Rosalind in here. Let's spill some tea. Welcome, Rosalind.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Oh, there we go. I got you, Rosalind. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Rosalind, tell us a little bit about who you were as a little girl and who you are now, and then we'll get into some of the books and all the incredible stuff that you've been doing.
Oh, as a little girl, well, I tried to write my first novel when I was 10, and I brought it into my elementary school class. And the teacher would read a chapter every day at lunchtime. It was called The Mystery of the Haunted House. I didn't plan to speak about that, but there you go. There you go. And I always wanted to be a teacher. From the instant I could do it, I lined up my dolls, and I had a blackboard and chalk, and I used to teach them, and I used to smack them around. But anyway, I did become a teacher, and I taught math and computer science for many years. And then, I was a good teacher because I think if you're not good, you quit. It's a very tough job. I taught high school, big kids, 9 through 12. And, they're always trying to get one up on you. And they didn't get one up on me. I was a tough teacher. You have to be tough to survive.
So how old were you when you started teaching? Oh, I think she's frozen. There we go. We got you back. You froze for a second.
Oh, well, here I am. I'm going to say that having been a good teacher, maybe even an excellent teacher, I thought I would be a terrific writer. And I have to tell you that it doesn't work that way. A Reluctant Spy is my 7th novel, and I didn't have time to write when I was teaching. So after I retired, I wrote A Reluctant Spy, and it was 16 years later. You have to learn how to write, you have to learn the craft, and I have to say, it is just as hard as teaching well. You become better at it. If you stick with it, you become better. So this is what I thought that I would speak about your mission, which is teaching educational awareness. So my mission is actually also teaching educational awareness, specifically the problems of women, smart women in a male-dominated workplace. So, for example, consider the two-body problem. which I do in A Reluctant Spy. You have two young people, both at Caltech, both with computer science PhDs, and they're equally qualified, equally good, but there's only one academic slot. Well, guess what? The man is the one who gets the slot. And as I say in my novel, he's Mr. Big Professor, while I am Mrs. Research Assistant. And in fact, what happens in my novel, without giving anything away, because it's a very exciting novel, you learn this in the beginning, that he is surreptitiously stealing her work. She is the lightning bolt. He is, in fact, the nuts and bolt person. And it's her ideas. She is introverted in the novel. She's happy to sit in her little office, do the research. And he is surreptitiously stealing her work and presenting it as his own. After he's no longer in the picture, guess what? Nobody thinks it's her work. Everybody thinks she has stolen his ideas. And when she tells them no, in their computer science department, it's a male-dominated, department, well, guess what? They don't believe her. And she is so furious at the injustice that she agrees to spy on them when she is approached by an FBI agent. Anyway, it's that fury of hers, that determination to succeed on her own terms that propels the plot. So what I've written, A Reluctant Spy, is in fact a spy thriller set in academia. It has all the trappings of a spy novel. I love spy thrillers. And so it has dead drops, a handler, meetings late at night. Madeline does things I would never do. She breaks into people's offices. She hacks into their computers. She is an utterly brilliant computer scientist who codes like a demon. So I have to tell you that she is not me. She is a much larger than life version of myself. She is, so I will say, she is much smarter, much braver. She is utterly fearless. She jumps out of airplanes. She does skydiving, and you discover that in the first chapter. I have a very exciting first chapter where she and her husband go skydiving. And anyway, after he is around, after he's no longer around, she begins to spy on the department. And I have to tell you that I didn't have a similar experience as she had, but I was a teacher. There was one high school, Ithaca High School in Ithaca, New York, where I lived my professional life. And at the time I applied for a job, there were no openings. So I took a job in the junior high school in that district. And they had a policy that when the high school had new opening, I could request a transfer and I'd be first in line for the job. So I did that. Guess what? The department, the math department, contained 12 men. They were all, I would say, young white men. And here I was, a mere woman. And they didn't want me in that department. And what happened was they tried to hire someone from a different district who looked just like them, a very nice guy whom I subsequently got to know. However, I threatened to sue the district because I had waited for 4 years. Not that I didn't love teaching junior high, but my expertise was in teaching high school. And my goal was to get a job in the high school. And so what happened was they were forced to let me in. But I have to tell you, before I got the job, I had a phone call from one of the men who said to me, "Why do you want to come and work here? You're not going to fit in." And I thought, what am I applying for? The country club? You know? I'm a teaching position, for goodness sake. And that made me really angry. And I persevered. And I got the damn job. And you know what? They wouldn't let me near the good classes. Calculus, pre-calculus, advanced geometry, anything with the word advanced in front of it. They didn't give me those classes. What I got was what in those days was called the minimum competency classes. The poorest kids at mathematics. Some of them came from such disadvantaged households like you wouldn't believe. And I had to teach them how to recognize numbers. Some of those kids couldn't tell the difference between the digits 873 and 378. To them, it was the same number. They were so disadvantaged. And you know what? I taught them. I embraced them because that was my job. I was finally in the high school. I was playing the long game. And there I was. They called me Mrs. Dracula. You know, in those days, I was very young. So when they would do weird things like jump up on the desk, well, guess what? I would jump up on the desk right with them. And they got very nervous with me. They couldn't figure me out. And you know something? This was a crowd of kids who had never succeeded in math, and half of them passed. So half of them, you could say half of them failed. But these were difficult kids. These were kids who had failed Algebra 1 3 times. They had no ability. And a funny thing happened. I earned the respect of the math department. And I fought my way in. And eventually, I did teach the, quote, better classes. But I understood, teaching isn't just teaching the top classes. But eventually, I got what I really, really wanted, to teach computer science. I taught AP computer science for nearly 20 years. And you want to know something? A lot of my students were hackers. I promise I was never a hacker. I am white and pure as the driven snow. I would never, ever hack into anyone's computer. I would never break into anyone's office. However, I taught kids who did. And I listened to them and I took notes, the exploits that they got up to. I gave every one of those exploits to Madeline, my protagonist in A Reluctant Spy. She does all these, I don't want to say bad things, but she doesn't let a locked door deter her. She doesn't let a shut down computer deter her. And you know what? I had to learn all these tricks because there isn't one thing in the book that is science fiction. All of it has been done and I learned it from my computer science students. And then, I wanted to write a thriller with a protagonist who was a brilliant woman, a brilliant computer scientist who could hack and do all these things that she needed to do. And then she's approached by the FBI to spy on the department. And because she has suffered such injustice at their hand, she agrees to do it. And then guess what? Trouble ensues. I will just say, trouble ensues. People who read A Reluctant Spy will enjoy the book. I'm just saying.
Well, Rosalind, we got some questions that are coming in. I just want to get those out to you. The first one comes in from Golf Life, and it's, did solving mathematical problems ever influence the way you approach solving mysteries in your novels?
That is an excellent question. What I did use is solving computer problems to write my novels. Because when you solve a computer problem, and I will confess that I am a very good programmer. In fact, I created that website, www.rosalindtukowski.com. When you solve a computer problem, I used to teach my kids, you have to do a top-down design. You're writing a program to, maybe calculate the grades in a school. Well, first of all, you have to set up the classes. Then you have to set up the schedule. Then you have to do this, then that. And every one of those main topics has stepwise refinement. You can refine it after you have the outline. And to my amazement, that is exactly how I write my novels, with a top-down design. So, yeah, I do know the ending. I know the beginning, I know the ending, I know the midpoint. But I fill in the details as I go. I'm not as rigid as I make myself sound. I leave a lot of wiggle room, and, sometimes characters surprise me. I want this person to be a bad person, and gosh darn it, if he doesn't fall in love with the protagonist's mother or something,
Love always has to jump in, does it not, right?
Don't always follow the rules. But I think, there's always a lot of discussion when I go to writing groups about plotters and pantsers. Stephen King is a pantser, where he can just sit down and write by the seat of his pants, and what comes out is sheer poetry. That would not be me. I have to design, I have to come up with every single category in every step in the outline, because otherwise you just go meandering on. And you know what? Very often when I'm reading a novel, I can tell this person's a pantser. She doesn't know where this darn book is going, and nor do I. Next, life is short, But this is just the point of view about writing. Everyone has their own process, and far be it from me to say who is right, who is wrong. I know what works for me.
Absolutely. And that's why you received the awards, Rosalind, because you weren't a pantser.
Hey, wait a minute. Stephen King sits down, starts the book, and writes the story. And look where Stephen King is. So I'm not saying what's right or wrong. Just I could never write like that. I think I'm not as talented to write as that. I really need to get my thoughts in order.
Well, I think, Rosalind, it's just a different style of writing for you than it is for him.
Yeah. I think so. He made it his career. I made teaching my career for a reason. I was a good teacher.
Yeah.
We
have another question for you, Rosalind, and it comes in from Citrus, and it's, how has your South African background influenced the stories and characters you create?
You know something? I have been living in the United States for a long time. Don't I have a Yankee accent? I think I do. This is a South African accent that's been living in upstate New York for a long time and has been living in America since I was 23 years old. I'm not going to say my age, but I'm just saying I'm no longer 23. So I don't think so. Not too much.
Well, Brandon, we have a question here from Brandon. It is, when you're developing a mystery, do you know the ending first or discover it as you write it?
I know the ending before I write. I just do. But you know something? That's an interesting question because I'm being very dogmatic. But the truth of the matter is, so I told you that A Reluctant Spy was my 7th novel. I think in novel number 4, I used to take my chapters to a critique group. And when I was in about the middle, the group that I was in said, "Oh, I know who did it. It was the bluff." I went right home and I changed the whole direction.
You will not know the ending, though.
You will not know the end. So, the question is, I'm flexible. Within my rigid guidelines, I'm flexible. And I do ask others. I have beta readers. I have very good critiquers who get my books. So A Reluctant Spy went through the Los Angeles Writers Critique Group. It went through the Ithaca Sunday Ladies Critique Group. It went through so many critique groups, and I got marvelous suggestions and rewrote it. The current version that's published is about I would say, the 6th rewrite, because I'm just as meticulous about rewriting as I am about writing. I don't just write it and publish.
Rosalind, I'm going to pull up the book. Tell us a little bit about the cover for the people that are not seeing it. How did you come up with the title and the design of the cover?
Well, first of all, the title had to be some kind of spy, because I love spy novels. And I think that the word spy has a certain resonance. For me, it does. When I see the word spy, I get a sample because I love spy novels. I read John le Carré. I read John le Carré, Olin Steinhauer. I read his books. I just love spy novels. So I wanted the word spy because mine is a spy novel set in academia, but it is a spy novel. I started with An Unlikely Spy. That was the original title. There were too many books that had that title. Guess what? There are now too many books that have this title, but there it is. It's a good title. And I really love that title. The cover, it was designed for me by someone that I thought I would publish with. But luckily, I made the decision to self-publish and didn't go along with him. He went bankrupt. But he did have a very good eye for designing covers. And the intention of the cover, it's a black background at night with lampposts at the side of a gravel road. And I intend it to be a road that leads to campus. And to me, it's a very mysterious cover. However, I will share with the person who asked, a lot of people have told me this cover doesn't work. Critiquers, people who, I go to a lot of marketing podcasts and presentations, because now my big thing is marketing. How do I sell these books? They're terrific books, I will tell you. I have given them my all. But marketing is a very difficult thing. And so right now, when people tell me the cover doesn't work, I have a much more dynamic cover on the 4th woman. That cover works. When I take, so, you know, I belong to a bridge club. And when I take both books to the bridge club, the first time I did that, everybody wanted the fourth woman. And that's a cover that works. So it's kind of interesting, but that's the genesis of the cover.
So, Rosalind, tell us a little bit about this cover that I just pulled up on the screen. It's the fourth woman. What's on the cover, and how did you come about that cover and the title?
Well, here's an interesting thing. The book is set with an antagonist who works in a lab. And it's a very mysterious lab. He doesn't do good things in the lab. And she starts to investigate him. Well, he's a stalker. And she goes and spies in his lab to try and thwart him. So here she is in a generic lab. And, you know, I saw a picture that had those colors. It was a completely unrelated picture. My sister, in fact, showed it to me and said, "Don't you think this is fabulous? Would you consider something like this as the colors in your cover?" And, you know, I did. I liked it. So when I had a cover designer for this, because I didn't do the cover, I have no talent in terms of covers. I said I wanted a woman, a back view, because you don't want to give any clues about what the protagonist looks like. But I want her in a mysterious lab with the moon coming in, nighttime activity. And people love that cover. I know that's successful because that book, that's the one people pick up. When I went to the Los Angeles Festival of Books this past year, 2026, past year, I guess in April, feels like a long time ago. This was the book people picked up. And I would say, no, you must buy A Reluctant Spy because it's the first in the series. However, if you buy both, we'll give you a bargain, you know. But that was the one they picked up. That was the cover that caught their eye.
So, Rosalind, tell us how you got the title, The Fourth Woman.
It's a mysterious title, isn't it?
It is.
And all I will say to you is that would be telling.
So you got to get the book.
I got it from the book. It, in fact, had a different title before, which I won't say. But it transpired that it was called The Fourth Woman. I didn't get the title straight away.
So you get the story first, Rosalind, and then the title.
Yes. So, for example, if I may segue, since we're talking about titles, my third book I have called Blood Match. And the original title was The Last Donor. And you know what? I didn't want it to be a title that gave too much away. And while I was writing the book, The Last Donor seemed to be giving something away that I didn't want to divulge. So then I said, you know what? I looked at a lot of mysteries and thrillers and titles. Now, it's true, there are quite a few that have the word blood, blood this, blood that. But it just had a kind of a ring to it, Blood Match. So I'm now settling on that for this book that isn't yet completed.
What kind of makes you think, right? What kind could it be? Could it be a match, a fight, a love war? Like there's so much that you could come from it, right?
Yeah, but now that you know me a bit, it's blood type.
Well, you did say that you were Mrs. Dracula back in the day for your
That's right.
students.
Yes, they really did call me that. I couldn't make that up.
Well, we have some more questions coming in, and the next one is from Real Estate with Kate. It's what makes a suspense character unforgettable for you as a writer?
I think it's the novel. Well, it's both the novel and the character. She has to have an arc. So in A Reluctant Spy, my character's arc, well, she starts out as very introspective, very retiring, shy, doesn't speak fluently, isn't sociable. She lets the husband be sociable. He's the sociable one. And she finds her voice in the novel. And that is a part of her character arc. As she becomes more confident as a spy, so she finds her voice and finds that she's stronger, that as she is achieving more of her goals, she becomes more determined, more out there, especially after her husband is no more, which you learn very quickly from the first chapter. So it's not giving away a spoiler. She finds her voice. And in the second novel, she starts out as a very confident businesswoman. She's a different person. It's 3 years later. She's changed her hairstyle. She's stylish. She's now puts herself forward. She's extremely brilliant in what she does. She has a cybersecurity business. Guess what she's not so good at? Personal relationships. She's in her early 30s. She decides she wants to find love, don't we all? And guess what she does? She doesn't know anyone. She goes online. And who does she find online? A disaster. And that propels the second novel.
Well, it sounds really intriguing. We have a question here from Lori that kind of goes into the intriguing. Is what makes a twist truly satisfying?
Well, it's a twist that you've laid the ground for. In other words, you don't want to just have something come out of a clear blue sky. You want the reader to say, of course, I should have seen that coming. So what you have to do to make the twist believable is you have to leave little clues along the way. And the way you do it is you use misdirection. You'll have a list of 3 things, maybe one of which is the clue. And all of this is craft. I went to so many craft workshops trying to learn how to do this darn thing. And that's one of the things I learned. It's all a contrivance. There's no such thing for me as just sitting down and writing a good book. There's a lot of stuff in this book that's contrived. Like, for example, the plot twists, the character twists, the who is the bad guy in the end, and how are we going to find it? It's a puzzle. And in a sense, it's like a math puzzle or a computer programming puzzle. But there is a puzzle at the end. And I won't go further than that. I will just say.
So you have to solve the problem yourself.
You have to solve the problem. That's correct. But I'm very aware of these craft things because it took me 6 unpublished books to learn them. Oh, I wrote some wonderful books. The Lincoln Affair, Watching, Uneasy Lies the Head. I always came up with good titles. Those books are on the shelf. They weren't good enough. Either that or I was unlucky. I tried to get agents. I tried to get publishers. They either fell downstairs or went bankrupt. So eventually, I started self-publishing, depending on myself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sometimes part of the story too, right? Is investing in ourselves.
I think so. I was very happy after I self-published. I never felt in any way that the book was diminished because the agents and publishers didn't work out.
Yeah.
I'm old enough now that I have enough sense of self that I knew the book was good and deserved to be published. I didn't try any of the other books. I didn't self-publish those. They weren't good enough. You know, you learn it by doing, going to workshops, going to critique groups, getting beta readers. I'm very lucky. I have a lot of friends who read my novels who volunteer now to be beta readers because they like to read it early. And they come up with wonderful critiques. Now, that's a whole nother can of worms, I will tell you, because in the early days, when someone would say, oh, this part is terrible, you know what? I would run home and change it. But now, only if more than one person picks on a certain spot do I look at it and think, maybe I should redo this.
Yeah.
So you learn how to accept critique as well. You learn the game. It is all a game. And it's taken me a lot of years to learn the game.
Well, and that's how we get better, right? By repetition. Keep doing it. Keep showing up. Keep, if you fail, you try again.
You know, perseverance is an enormous factor in succeeding as a writer. There are very few writers who write a book that's immediately accepted. The one common word is rejection. If you don't know rejection, you haven't played the game.
Exactly.
Very few people have a phenomenon, an overnight sensation. You look at this person who's 40 years old and who's written a book and he's an overnight sensation. You will find other books in his background that he plodded along, persevered. I feel very strongly about that.
Absolutely. Well, the next question we have comes in from the Thrive Show, and it's how do you balance giving readers enough clues while still keeping the mystery unpredictable?
It's hard. I have a very good reader in my sister, and she's reading Blood Match, and she's about halfway through. Oh, she said to me, I know who did it. I know who it is. And bingo. No more, honey. We've changed it.
You will not know.
You will not know. It's very, the key is getting other people to critique your work. I think every writer needs it. There are certain writers, and I'll give you an example. I'll name names. Henning Mankell is a Swedish writer of thrillers. He is since deceased. He wrote the most fantastic debut novel called Faceless Killers. It was so fantastic. Henning Mankell, Swedish mystery. I couldn't wait to get the next in the series, and the next in the series, and the next, and the next. The first 8 books were so incredible. I would get it as soon as it was available and devour it. See, this is part of my training too, seeing how other people do it. He was just the best. Book number 9 was not so good. Book number 10 was terrible. And I decided that the reason was he'd become confident. I bet these weren't read by other critiquers. I bet he wrote them and got them published. Because You know what? I thought it showed. It's a funny thing, writing. To keep yourself excellent, you need readers.
Yes. Well, that's what the whole story is, right? It's the reader. You're writing for the reader.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same in teaching. You're not doing it for your colleagues.
Yeah.
You're doing it for your students. And that was a lesson I learned when I taught the low ability kids. These are kids too who need good teachers. And nobody wanted to teach them. They were difficult kids. They didn't behave well. You know?
Have you heard from any of those difficult kids that you taught?
You know, I bumped into one when I was, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 years after I taught him. I bumped into him. I didn't recognize this young man coming towards me, and he said, "Mrs. Tukolsky." And I said, "Hello." He said, "When you taught me, I was impossible." He said, "I don't know how you stood it." He said, "Guess what? I turned into a real person. I turned my life around, and you were one of my great teachers." And he was a kid in a low ability class. My heart, if I can tell you, I used to, when I taught, get lots of letters and cards from students. They loved me because I became a good teacher. This kid from way back when said that to me, and it just was so meaningful. So meaningful. So, yeah, they do. I think they do.
Yeah. And there's always that one person that believes in you, right? That pushes you to the limits, gets you outside of that box and says, you know what, you got it. Like, let's figure this problem out, right? It's almost like a math equation, right?
Right.
Like when you look at the students, like you said, there was 50% that passed and 50% that didn't. Well, maybe the 50 that didn't pass were not at that stage of understanding the problem yet.
No, some of them were very weak. Some of them really needed special services, extra help. I taught one kid, for example, a Cambodian refugee. He had never had any education at all. He didn't know what a number was. And that just broke my heart. I taught this kid how to count. And it was just a revelation. I visited the homes of some of these kids, these really, really disadvantaged kids. I went into one home where the only piece of furniture was a television set.
Wow.
Just dirty floors, dog feces. I can't even describe to you how horrible it was. And I got the insight. How can I teach this kid not to scratch his desk when he's never had a piece of furniture that he has to respect? It opened my eyes. There were some really, really disadvantaged kids. I don't even know what question I'm answering.
No, that's okay. We do this. On Tea Time, we take those little rabbit holes sometimes and we go down, and the stories are meant to be told, right? Because these children that had no furniture, they grew up understanding to respect things they didn't have and appreciate. We take so much for granted that we don't understand what the next person's story is. And
that's right. And I think that you have to communicate with disadvantaged people to understand what it's all about, because I really knew when I taught these kids well. Yeah. Whereas the bright kids, the really bright kids, the kids I just adored teaching because they were so smart. My heart was there. Those kids would have done fine without me. Those kids do well with any teacher. They just break the code on whichever teacher they have, and they do wonderfully. And every now and then I get notes from a kid. My AP computer science kids are now old. They've got grandchildren. They write to me and say, "Oh, I really loved having your class. It made such a difference." And I would think to myself, you would have done well with any teacher.
Yeah.
Really. So it's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah. We have a question here from Jason, and it is, what did each novel teach you about your own writing?
Well, how bad I was. I write something and I think it's marvelous. So I had a real good time This morning, I wrote a new chapter of Blood Match, and I had so much fun writing it. And I thought I was just the bee's knees. I read it this afternoon, and it was awful, awful. I'm not going to throw the whole thing out, but a good part of it is going to go. You know, you get such a sense of yourself, and it's not always true. It's not always true.
Well, we have another question from Citrus, and it's, do real life experiences ever become inspiration for your fictional characters?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they do. I have to say now, whenever I'm in a situation where I'm waiting, in a waiting room, in a supermarket line, I really look at the people. When I'm playing bridge, I really look at my opponents. And I see that this is somebody who's having real difficulty getting up and sitting down. How will she play bridge? This is someone who's a real weak player, but a really smart person. Why? Why isn't she better? So yes, absolutely yes.
Well, I really enjoy getting comments like this. Miss Liz has found another fascinating guest. Absolutely, guys. The guests find Miss Liz. I don't know how it works, but it works.
Well, I'm lucky. I feel very lucky. It's so great that you let me talk about myself. I mean,
Absolutely.
who doesn't love talking about themselves? You let me talk about my books. A Reluctant Spy, The Fourth Woman, Blood Match, which is going to come out. I mean,
So when is Blood Match coming out?
I'm hoping by December. But
So-
you know what? It's not coming out until it's gone through my dragon ladies.
And they cannot know the ending.
No, you know, my sister,
Rosalind is changing the whole chapter again.
the whole book. My sister sits on my shoulder. I call her the Brenda Gnome because she is so tough with me. Oh, she says another adolescent word. She doesn't like me to use dramatic verbs when a plain verb, a descriptive verb will do. So she has taught me this.
So is your teacher, your sister, a teacher as well?
Well, you know, she's a professor of English literature and African literature at Cape Town University. She's still in South Africa. But we communicate. She's very supportive of what I do, and I am of her. And I respect her opinions. I certainly find out what works and what doesn't work. Like when she says to me, "Oh, I know who that person is," and then says the name that I've carefully hidden, you know.
And then you're like, oh no, we got to change this again.
We got to change it. We got to change it, and I do.
Well, Rosalind, I want to get into the words you gave me for your tea, and your tea was thrillers, excitement, and atmospheric. Am I saying?
Atmospheric is what I
I've
meant.
never heard that word before. Can you tell me what that word is?
Atmospheric. Every scene has an atmosphere to it. Like the atmosphere in this interview is relaxed. You relax your guests. You're kind to your guests. So I feel very comfortable. That's the atmospheric. But supposing you were in a gloomy room where the lighting was low and you were very weird in some way.
Yeah.
That atmospheric wouldn't be so good. So in the cover for The Fourth Woman, that conveys an atmosphere of mystery. And it's a disturbing cover.
Mm.
And it says there's a disturbing novel in here, and the atmospherics are disturbing. In A Reluctant Spy, the atmosphere, well, it becomes colored by the character arc of my protagonist, but it's not as dark as the second book. That's what I mean by atmospherics.
I
What
like
is
that
the
word.
atmospheric in my study behind me? Well, I have to confess, I did neaten it up for this interview. However, notice how everything's orderly.
Yes.
There are no papers on the carpet. There are never papers on the carpet. They're always on my desk or on the shelf or in my binders. So the atmospheric that I produce here is completely uninteresting in terms of a thriller writer. Let me just assure people that it's a misdirection, that A Reluctant Spy and the Fourth Woman are very suspenseful. And the reason I can create them is because I lead an orderly life and I contrive to create them. It doesn't just happen. And I believe with most people, it doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
The atmospherics are something you've got to work on.
You know, we don't pay attention to the atmosphere as much as we should because there's a story in the atmosphere.
There's a story in the atmosphere for every scene. And if there isn't, you need to delete the scene. So for every scene that I write, I set the scene. It's gloomy, rainy, cold, snowy. And I don't mean the weather.
Yeah.
The character's not feeling so good. Her mother is missing. You know, those are atmospherics. And
I like that word.
you use atmospherics to create suspense. I do. You know, you can make a wind, you can have it blow gently, you can have the blowing curtains, or you can have it hiss through the cracks. Notice hissing through the cracks is a different atmospheric.
So when you're writing a story, Rosalind, do you put in the descriptions really detailed, or do you kind of leave some suspense in?
Oh, when I'm
Nice.
writing a synopsis, it depends what I'm writing. So, for example, often you're asked for a one-paragraph blurb. So what I try and do is ask a question. You know, so for example, the log line for A Reluctant Spy is on the day of her husband's funeral. A young computer scientist, a woman, is asked to spy on the computer science department, to go undercover. That is a very short description. It's a log line. If I write a synopsis, well, it's a summary of the story. Sometimes in the old days when I applied for agents, they would ask for a one-page synopsis or a two-page synopsis. You know, some asked for a long 5-page, 10-page, whatever they asked for, I did. You just put in more or less detail.
Well, we have one final question here, and then I want to get your final message to all the listeners tonight. After nearly 40 years in education, what is one lesson from teaching that still influences you today?
The lesson is I don't know everything. I have a lot to learn. A lot to learn about writing, a lot to learn about bridge. I aspire to be a championship bridge player, and I make mistakes every time I play. Every time somebody reads a draft, they find something to fix. There's always something to learn. That is the message.
And Rosalind, how can people find you for the audio listeners? If you could just spell out your website.
Yes,
and then
www.rosalindtukolsky.com. It's my name. So if they Google me on Amazon or even just Google me, my website will come up. And I would like you to know that I created my own website.
And it is a beautiful website. So go over and check that website out because you did an amazing job on that website. I created my own website as well. And it's a lot of work. a lot of trials and errors, right? This works, that works, that there's a lot of work building a website. So check out the website. I just want to thank you, Rosalind, for joining me and bringing your books to the table of tea time. Thank you to the audience and people who came in and brought your questions. I cannot do this without all of you guys. So we're just going to do a quick recap of what tonight's tea time is, and then we'll be back tomorrow with 2 new tea times, and we'll do this all over again.
Wow.
What a clever and engaging and suspense-filled conversation we have shared tonight. Rosalind, thank you for bringing your intelligence, humor, experience, and creative insight to the tea time table. Tonight's conversation reminded us that great suspense is not created by danger alone. It is created by timing, by question, by clues, by characters who must make choice before they fully understand what is waiting around the corner. Through a reluctant spy, the fourth woman, and your upcoming blood match, you showed us how logic and imagination can work together to create stories that challenge the mind while keeping readers turning pages. We explored your journey from decades of mathematics education into award-winning fictions, the strategy behind the suspense writing, and the patience required to build a mystery without revealing too much too soon. One of tonight's greatest takeaways is this: a good mystery gives us enough information to keep searching, but never enough to stop wondering. Rosalind, your journey also reminds us that reinvention has no expiration date. The skills we develop in one chapter of life can become the foundation for something completely unexpected in the next. A mathematics classroom became part of the training ground for suspense. Bridge sharpened strategies, teaching strengthened communications, experience became story. As we close tonight's tea time, I'd like to leave everyone with this thought. What ability have you spent years developing that might be waiting to become part of an entirely different chapter of your life? Sometimes our next adventures is not a departure from everything we have done. It is the surprising combination of all of it. Rosalind, thank you for sharing your remarkable journey and for reminding us that intelligence, curiosity, creativity makes a wonderful, dangerous combination when placed inside a suspense novel. Until next time, continue following the clues, continue challenging the mind, and continue serving real-life tea, truth, experience, and awareness, one page turning story at a time. And tonight's takeaway from Miss Liz is life rarely wastes the skills we gather along the way. Mathematics, teaching, strategies, and imaginations may seem like separate chapters, yet together they can create an entirely new story. Sometimes reinvention is simply discovering how beautifully all the pieces fit. And I'll see everybody tomorrow, and we'll do this all over again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roz.